Hello everybody and welcome to today's session on the Common Application tips and guidelines for using it as a way of applying. My name's Austin. I work for the Office of Undergraduate Admission at the University of San Diego. You can see that emblem there in the top right, as well as it's on my polo shirt today. Super excited to have you join me. We won't take up too much time, but wanted to give you a lay of the land of what the Common Application is and why it's important for you, whether you're tuning in as a student who's a senior applying right now, or maybe you're a junior or a sophomore or even a first year and you're just checking out college. This is a great way for you to know what to expect as you go into the Common Application. But first, it's important to recognize where we're at all together. Let me click this. There we go. Look at all these projects and papers I haven't started. Tell me about it. Is anyone out there a procrastinator like I am? My goodness, I have a list of all these things that I need to do, and it just often takes me a long time to get my motivation up to do it. But what I'm telling you is go for it, push through, and hopefully today will be a good jump start to making sure you're on your way to applying to college. So, the Common Application, it all starts on the Common App website. I suppose we should also start before that in saying what the Common Application is. It's really exactly what it sounds like, an application that is common to hundreds of universities throughout the United States. It's a way that you can fill out an application one time and then you can submit it to multiple schools. So it saves you time, it helps us respect you and get to know you a little bit more deeply and unify our standards. So if you want to use the Common Application, and many schools will require it for their application process, you'll log on to apply.commonapp.org/login and create a username and password. All of you tech students out there are just, you know this stuff. But when you create your username, it'll ask you for an email address. And my biggest recommendation to you there is make sure it is an email address that you are checking. Make sure it's an email address that you are checking, because the Common App and schools that you're applying to through the Common App will communicate with you through that email. We'll say, hey, we're missing this document, or hey, don't forget this is the deadline. So make sure you have access to that email address that you're listing as your username, create a password, and then that will become your primary means of logging in from this point into the future. One recommendation I've heard and I stand behind is maybe creating a separate email address altogether. So maybe it's like austins.collegeapplications@gmail.com, and then all of my college app emails will go straight there and I can just monitor that one inbox. Because every school is different. They're going to be having different timelines, different deadlines, different kind of tips and email campaigns, so you can monitor it all there in that one spot. Speaking of timelines and deadlines and procrastination, know your deadlines and your timeline of submitting the application, which is actually a great thing to do right here in the Common Application dashboard. So you'll see here that there are a couple tabs across the top. When you log in, there's Dashboard, My Colleges, Common App, College Search, and Financial Aid Resources. When you search for schools on the Common App, you'll be able to see all the schools in San Diego or California or Maine or wherever it is. You can kind of sort and filter as you please by using that College Search tab. But when you add them to your list, they show up on your dashboard. So you can see on this student's dashboard, they've got University of San Diego, whoop whoop, and also Virginia Tech. And those two are actually listed by alphabet. So University of San Diego is at the top because it comes before V. But you can also use that sort by feature. I don't know if you can see my cursor right now, but you can sort by the date that everything's due. And it just has this one main spot so you can see all your deadlines, and you can actually add up to 20 colleges to this one spot so you've got them all on your list. Now, when you select one of those schools, so on my dashboard I've now clicked on University of San Diego, there's a drop-down portion. It has more details for me so I can see my applications in progress, and there are a couple of different icons here that tell me if the different questions are required, if they're optional, if there are additional details where maybe they're giving me more writing prompts that require a response outside of your Common Application. And you can actually see if we, as the college, have interacted with it by downloading your application or your supplement. So let's say in this situation, I have completed my 2 required questions. I'll be able to submit them with my application, and then once the admissions office at USD finds it, they'll download it, and you'll be able to see, oh great, Austin's looking at my application now. They're actually reading over it. So pretty cool that it's in real time, but ultimately we ask you to monitor this dashboard to make sure you're not missing anything, to make sure you're not missing any deadlines, and to make sure that you've submitted all the necessary documentation for us to review your application in full. Now, The next slide is going to tell you about another way to stay on track, no pun intended, because it's the Common App On Track app. You can download this on your phone, but it's a great way for you to pretty much do everything we just talked about on the online platform on your phone. So you can search and add for new colleges, you can see details about those colleges, you can see the completion status of your various parts of your application. I mean, you can even get push notifications and reminders on your phone of like, hey, don't miss this deadline, or don't forget to submit this. So can you tell that I'm a procrastinator? I just keep coming back to this like application and deadline piece because we want to make sure you are right on track. So go ahead and download that from the App Store if you wish, or the Common App website. Now, this part here is the Common Application profile. So on the left side, once you see My Colleges, there's University of San Diego, and as you're filling this out, we start asking you some questions. What term are you applying for? Are you, some schools will offer regular decision or early action, so you'll be able to select which application cycle you will be applying for. Do you intend to pursue financial aid? These questions are a little different for every school, but the biggest thing that you should know is that as you're filling out these questions, do not use any nicknames, okay? Use your legal name. If you're choosing to submit test scores, use the same name that you put on your test scores exactly. So at USD we get over 13,000 applications every year. So when we're trying to match your test scores to your application, to your high school transcript, if they're all sent in separately, we'll use your name to unify those, right? To make sure that we're getting it all put together in one unit correctly. But if those names are different because of nicknames or a misspelling, or you used your middle initial or not, it can get a little bit confusing for us. So I'm asking you on behalf of our office to make sure you take your time filling out those names exactly the same at each spot. On the next slide, you will see a little bit more about the profile, so some breakdowns, so that personal information, your contact details, demographics, geography. So as you go through and finish all the questions in these specific drop downs, you'll have this green check mark. You'll see that I haven't yet finished address, so it's not shown. And at the top right, you'll also see very helpful tools. So I don't know how to fill this out. Oh, well, I'll check out a video tutorial, or I can even preview what my application looks like. Now the questions within here are dynamic. So when you fill it out, you'll be able to, like if you select yes to a specific question, additional questions might be opening up below it to get clarifying details. Contact details are very, very important, as I mentioned earlier. The demographic piece that I mentioned, oops, did I do that again? My goodness, I'm really struggling with this whole computer thing. The demographic section actually requires some questions and have some questions that are optional. So if you don't want to answer all of these questions, you can totally skip those and check the completed this section to my satisfaction button on the page. We at USD say that if you are comfortable sharing those demographic pieces, it helps us get a better picture of who you are as a person. It really helps us see you overall, to have this holistic review by knowing all of your identities, all of your facets that you're comfortable sharing. So feel free to fill it out as much as you are comfortable, and then click the I fill this out to my satisfaction checkbox. The geography piece lets us know if you've ever moved during your college experience or throughout life, where you're living now. The languages piece, if you speak another language at home, or you are fluent or are learning another language, that's a great way to show that you have that multiple language ability. The citizenship piece indicates whether or not you are domestic or international, have dual citizenship, so you can fill that out completely. And then finally, the common application fee waiver at the bottom. If you are eligible for this, you can check that box there so that you can waive that application fee. All right, family. This is a big one, right? So making sure we know your family, excuse me. This gives us insight into your family life, how many siblings you have, the educational level of your parents, of your siblings, if you're the first person attending college. So you can see there, you'll have your parents, and then also the sibling piece, you can even show how many siblings you have. This helps us, again, get that better picture of who you are, make sure we're understanding the full family unit, because maybe you're talking about later in your activities how you've been the caretaker for one of your parents or for one of your siblings, and that adds to how we can see you as an overall applicant. Education is our next. We're moving across the left side here. So profile, family, education. This is a great way for us to see all of the schools and colleges that you might have been enrolled in from here. So some students transfer high schools throughout their high school experience. We want to see that here. Some students take dual enrollment or are taking a local community college class. We want to see that here. Maybe you've taken summer school courses. We want to see that here. If you're in like Running Start or any sort of courses or programs that help you get a head start for college, we want to see that here. If you've taken a gap year, that's a great thing to put here too. Basically, we're just trying to get a full view of what your high school experience has been like educationally. So fill this out with honors, AP classes that you have, colleges and universities, all your grades. Take your time here and give us that full view. All right, get to testing. So a big note for all of you out there who are looking at schools, schools sometimes require standardized test scores, sometimes they're test optional, sometimes they're test blind. So you'll be able to kind of see what the school's requirements are on this page. At USD, we are a test optional school. This means that you can submit your test scores if you've taken them and you want to. Some students come up to me and they're like, Austin, man, I worked really hard for the SAT score. I want you to see it. I want you to know that I put in that dedication and the score that I got. And I say, great, submit it. It helps me get a better idea of who you are and what you dedicate yourself to. Some students are like, Austin, COVID prevented me from taking the SAT or ACT, or I took it 3 times and I just didn't do as well as I hoped I would, so I don't really want to add it into my application. And I say, great, no problem at all. Don't feel like you have to submit your test scores. It's completely optional. It's completely up to you. If you think that it enhances your application, feel free. If you're saying like, no, I can show off who I am without those test scores, don't feel like you need to. You won't be penalized for not submitting those test scores. Now, this is something that you should look into at each school, as I mentioned, but you'll be able to indicate whether or not you'll be sending them, the dates that you'll be taking them, because maybe you're submitting your application before you've taken your final test. You can indicate that you'll be taking it in the future on this portion too. All right, activities. Next one, this is a big piece. Activities is a huge part of the application and a great way for me to see what you've been involved in for the last 3, 4, 5, however many years. So, in this holistic review piece, we want you to make yourself shine through these activities. There is a 10 activity limit on the Common Application. So as you start filling this out with arts or music, clubs, community engagement, family responsibilities, all these different aspects, you have up to 10 spaces. You can say how long you've been involved with them, how many hours per week you put into them, what your role is. Maybe you have a leadership role. Any of these details that help me get a better idea of who you are and what you've been involved with throughout high school. So we at USD use kind of a lens that's called change making. So what we're looking for in these activities, and this ranges from school to school, but for USD specifically, we're looking for leadership you've shown, for any talents that you have, for community service that you've engaged with, social justice efforts, the betterment of the world around us. And we label all of those as change making. So if you want to know more about change making, log on to our website and kind of read about what that change making aspect is, because this is our way of saying anything and everything that you're doing inside and outside of the classroom so that we can give you all of the respect and all of the acknowledgement that you deserve for the investment you've put into these. All right, writing. This is a fun piece. Write the dreaded essay or essays, depending on how many schools or what schools you're applying to. So, for the Common App, they have a list of 7 prompts, I believe, that you can choose from. It's a minimum of 250 words in response and a maximum of 650 words. So, it's a pretty short essay, and what we're asking for here is a glimpse into who you are. So this Common Application essay gives me kind of a splice of your identity, what you're interested in, what you want to pursue, and allows me to see your writing skills. So you can use a lot of different stories, or I would say a lot of different proofreaders to help you with those stories as a way of communicating your essence to me as a person who's seeing your application on a screen. You'll see here which schools require your different essays, which schools don't require an essay. At USD, indeed, we do require the essay. And you can use different tools, so you can even write it right on the Common Application. I would not suggest that. I would suggest using a Word document or Google Docs so that you can come back and edit it. That way, if the Common Application crashes, you still have a copy over here. And proofread. I think we're going to get to that pretty soon because, yes, this is how I feel so often. Half of my job is writing big pieces and email campaigns, and I'm like, what do we write about today? There's so much to talk about, but how do I exactly phrase this? We all know there's that moment that we hit, that writer's block, that wall. But don't worry, we're going to get you some tips and some keys for writing a strong personal essay. So, tip number 1, or key number 1, you are not a mind reader. Okay? You don't have to be a mind reader. You don't need to think about what I want to hear. Write about what you want to share. And I'll say that's important because I can tell when a student is passionate about what they're writing about and when they're just like, I feel like I need to make my life into this story where I'm here and then I have a conflict and then I find my resolution and look how everything turned out. Oops, let's go ahead and close that. So, there it is again, my goodness. So, if you are able to write about something you're passionate about, that is exactly what we want to hear. 2, don't underestimate the everyday. No topic's too small. I'll give you an example. My favorite essay I've ever read was about a student who had to commute to school 45 minutes each way. His essay was about the 45 minutes driving to school, the 45 minutes driving from school, and all the things that student thought about, how they grew, how they were introspective, and the ways that added to who they would be on our campus. That still sticks with me. That was 3 years ago I read that application, and it still honestly gives me chills because I just loved it so deeply. Be focused. Provide depth, not breadth. Don't feel like you have to condense, 17, 18 years of your life into one essay. Give me a snippet, just a piece of who you are. Show me that piece that you're passionate about. Show, don't tell. It's important to know why your topic is important. Let your voice be heard. Let me know that you're passionate. Show me what you've done to contribute to that as well. And finally, proofread. I already mentioned this. Proofread. So I would consider myself a grammarian, which means that I love the proper use of a semicolon. Like, wow, a student who can use a semicolon well, hats off to you. So proofread, give it to a neighbor that you kind of know that might be able to read it over and say, oh, based on your application, Austin, I see these 2 or 3 good things about you. Maybe you want to clarify this because I didn't quite understand that part. So proofread it and submit it. Know that we are trying to work to see all of who you are in those essays. The next section, or I suppose a part of the writing section, is also disciplinary history. So in this portion, in the screen, you'll be able to indicate whether or not you have had any disciplinary history, and we just ask that you be very honest. Be very, very honest. We want to see that you have integrity, that you are offering this out without us mandating it, and it's really important that you are able to share that honesty with us through your own words. So take your time on that, and you can add in another essay for additional information to maybe explain that, or if you have another passion or interest that you want us to know about, or other context that's important for us to know as we review your application. You'll also see here, pretty cool, that Common App started asking about COVID-19, and if you've had any sort of impacts because of that, as we all have, but if you'd like to write about it and share how that might have affected your application process or who you are as a person, you can add it in right there. All right. Additional questions at the very bottom. So these are what we call member questions. It's in the other information portion. There are a few different questions that we ask that are specific to University of San Diego, and other schools will have member questions that are specific to them as well. It's what the institution wants to know about you that's not included on the general Common App, and that's our way of saying, hey, have you actually researched who we are? Do you know why you want to go to our school? Have you done your time connecting with students, connecting with admission representatives, doing some research online, visiting campus if it was ever possible? We want to see that you understand who we are. So that's where this member question piece comes in. USD has a few of them. There are 4 to choose from, and you select 2, and then you can add that to your application, so we see you as an even more qualified applicant. All right, a few more logistical pieces. We're almost done, but as a part of the application, you can also specify recommenders, people who can talk about who you are inside and outside of the classroom. So you've done all this time writing an essay, putting in your activities, showing what you're interested in, but now we want to see who you are from another person's perspective. Oftentimes it's a counselor or a teacher. So in here you'll be able to use this invite recommenders piece to add the name and the email address of the person you would like to recommend. You can email, or you can even leave that email address portion blank if the person prefers to do it offline, but I think in our current world most everyone does it via email. Then once you submit it, or once they submit it, you'll be able to see that they have sent it in and whether or not we've downloaded it on our side. So take your time with these. Think about who you want to write your letters of recommendation. It's good to have that academic perspective. Some students will submit one from an employer or a boss or a coach or something like that, so we get an outside of the classroom experience with you. But make sure you are noting those early and prompting your recommenders to get their recommendations in sooner rather than later. And then this big name across the bottom, FERPA, F-E-R-P-A, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Basically, it's our way of when the recommender submits a letter, you are going to say, hey, I don't need to read it because I trust that that person's giving an honest recommendation of me, and I'm not going to edit it. I don't need to qualify any of it. I just trust what they're going to say. So you have the choice to waive this or not. We highly recommend that you accept it because it shows us that you have integrity. It allows us to know that the letters that are submitted were written candidly, they were written truthfully, they come straight from the mouth of your recommender rather than any foul play on the outside of that. So that's FERPA. Now, with our last 4 or 5 slides, we're getting to the very end when you're about to review it and submit it. Exciting times. So when you're on this page to review and submit Common Application, we recommend that you read it thoroughly, make sure you don't have any typos. Like, I'm not the best proofreader, if I'm being honest with you, so I really need to have some self-control during these situations and say, this is going to pay off. I need to make sure every T is crossed, every I is dotted, every portion of my name is spelled exactly correctly, my address is right, because we don't want any mix-ups to happen along the way. So once you've done that, I also recommend that you have a fresh pair of eyes review your application before submitting it. It's always nice to just take your eyes off of it and get someone else to look over it. And then finally, different schools will have different payment pieces. So at USD, our application fee is $55. I already mentioned earlier our Common App fee waiver, if you would like to waive that fee and you qualify for it. But schools have different payment options, credit card, e-check, College Board, ACT, NACAC, all of these fee waivers for college-specific schools are also available. So you'll need to do a little bit of individual research in that, but make sure that that is all submitted before the deadline of your school's application. All right. Woohoo! I want to take like a time to dance party right here. Like, you submitted it. That's exciting stuff. And that's why you see that fun confetti there. That's what those little things are. Most schools, when they receive your application, will let you know. When you press the submit button, they'll have this confirmation, but then the school, like for example, if you're submitting to USD, will probably say, hey, thanks for submitting to Common App. We want to let you know that we got it. We'll be reviewing. Here are some things that you can look at in the meantime by joining us for a virtual tour or anything like that, connecting with us on Instagram. So all schools will process through that a little bit differently, but just making sure that you're monitoring that email that I mentioned earlier to say, yes, they've received it and we're ready to go. Tip number 5 is that when these institutions send you that email, they'll often say, hey, we have a portal, like for us, it's the My San Diego portal, where you can monitor your application status. So once you're accepted, it's going to show up there and you'll be able to see new things. So hold on to that portal username and password for all your schools. Create a spreadsheet. Write them all down in one place so you can just log in when you're ready and make sure you're right on track there. All right. 3 more slides. Woo, we're getting to the end. Common App tips, just a few more that I have for you. When you're on that dashboard piece, as I mentioned earlier, and you have all of those schools, up to 20 of them listed, sort by deadline. I mentioned originally that they're sorted alphabetically, but sort them by deadline so you know the pace to complete your work and you're not waiting until that last minute like I do, and you can submit earlier. Once you submit the Common App, there are revision opportunities possible. Most often that's done by emailing the admissions office directly, letting them know your situation and working it through with them. And I should say, when you are on your first application submission, you can have edits to your essay afterwards. So know that this is not like the end-all be-all. There are processes for making sure that you can have this be exactly the piece that you want. But don't wait too long, okay? Because schools start reading those applications really quickly after you submit them. And we want to have your best work. That's why I said proofread, proofread, proofread. So we don't have to go through all this stress anyway. When you submit, what we can see as an institution, we can actually before you even submit, we can see if you've begun an application for us through the Common Application. So maybe you've listed USD as one of your schools. I'll be able to see that. Once you submit it, I'll be able to see that it's been submitted. And then something you should know is that it takes about 3 or 4 weeks from the date of your Common Application submission for our institution to download the application from Common App and put it in front of our counselors. So you filled it all out, you spent all this time, you submit it to Common App, and then it sits there for about 3 or 4 weeks just to make sure everything's going through. And then we at USD come over and we say, boop, we're going to take that, and they put it on my computer screen so I can read it and make an admission decision on you. So very exciting times. There are some times there, as I mentioned earlier, you can edit your application afterwards. So just reach out if you need anything. Use the Common Application dashboard to do that as well. And man, this is sad. I wish you all were like sitting in front of me so I could say, raise your hand if you have any questions, let's chat. But obviously times are a little bit different right now, or a lot of bit different. So I'm just hoping that you all are very, very well. If you do have questions, of course you can submit them virtually. Email's the name of the game these days to the Office of Undergraduate Admission. We're right there at admissions@sandiego.edu. You can also find your admission counselor through that. So you have a specific admission counselor who's going to be reading your applications. So reach out to admissions and say, hey, I have a question about the Common App. Also, can you introduce me to my counselor? And we'll make sure you can contact them. Maybe it's for just a quick sit-down meeting virtually, or maybe it's just to exchange some notes via email. But with that, I'm going to sign off. I wish I knew exactly how long I've been recording this. I hope it wasn't too much. I hope it was practical and helpful. And I hope that you all have a good time with this process. The college application process is a lot. I know it's a lot. But I believe in you. So I hope that you stay healthy, stay safe, and I hope that you apply to University of San Diego. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy.